Hi students, it's Arthur, and we're now going to start LinkedIn section 2, and we're going to start covering from where we left off in the first video, and that's with the headline. So basically, first of all, I want to start in here just talking about the connections again. Depending on the semester, it'll either be 20 connections for a normal in-person class or 10 connections for the compressed summer session as far as the requirements go. And just recognize that this is not going to be on every single slide as we go through, but I'll bring it up again towards the end as well, just to clarify that point and make sure you look at the rubric for your specific semester. So the headline is the last area of the introduction section that we talked about in the previous video. And the headline of your profile is super important because it acts like a quick snapshot of who you are or who you want to be professionally. Think of it as a headline of a newspaper article. It needs to grab the attention of the reader. And this is why it's a big deal, but only if it's done very well. First of all, it shows up in searches as we spoke about before. A good headline has keywords that helps you pop up when employers are searching for someone with your skills or interests. It's also where we sort of get a chance to make our first impression. It's often the first thing people see on our profile, along with our photo and the banner. So it sets the tone for how others perceive your professional image. It also shows what you offer or what you're looking to do. So by clearly stating what job or field you're interested in, along with your top skills, it immediately tells potential employers and hiring managers how you might fit into their organization. It also is a continuation of building your brand. It helps you build your professional branding, which is basically just marketing yourself in the career field. And it's especially useful when you're just starting out. Finally, it encourages connections. A catchy headline can make people want to learn more about you, which is great for networking and finding job opportunities. So I'm going to include two suggested formats you can use to create your headline. First, option one here is basically to create a three-level headline. The first part is going to be talking about the type of position you're looking for. So entry level with the job title or aspiring with that job title in there, like aspiring Java software developer, which is in this example. The next section is going to be industry-specific keywords that you expect recruiters to potentially use, and you would take this information, as we've talked about before, from sources such as the job description, Pathway U, and looking at that information about the roles that you have interest in, informational interviews you might do with people at that organization, etc. And then finally, the last area is talking a little bit about potential hard skills that you have. Soft skills really aren't useful that much in the headline. So hard skills are what we're going to be looking for here. And in this particular case, obviously, these will align with the type of requirements that a position that you're interested in would have. The second option is also kind of a three-section structure. And this one starts, again, with your objective, similar to the other one. But this one then highlights a little bit more about you and includes what I think is a more interesting ending that I personally prefer. And then here's a couple of examples that kind of relate to students and what you could potentially use. And feel free to steal all of these as much as you possibly need to do. That's why I'm showing them to you. And so here's a couple of, like I said, three examples, and I'm going to show you more here in a moment. So don't get too hung up on these three because I'll show a few more and you might potentially use. Other considerations, this is also an opportunity to customize this to your specific preferences. And a couple of these preferences are going to be related to the industry that you're interested in. This isn't particularly critical at this point, but it's something that enables you to target people and industries that you have interest in, and the same goes for location. If you aren't in that area that you're interested in, you can add that to your headline to help it gain the attention of the right people. So the one thing I want to mention to you is about remote opportunities. That does not mean you could work anywhere. In fact, a lot of companies, even though you can work from home, there are certain restrictions that you have to follow. Sometimes they want you to be within a certain driving distance from a office location. That could be one criteria. Another criteria is that some smaller companies don't have employees in other states, so they might restrict the states that you can live in. My wife, for instance, works for Novant, and she works from home. However, she's not allowed to work at just anywhere. So, for instance, my son lives in Kentucky, and we were up there for an extended reason to take care of her mother. And the company actually pushed back on that. They wouldn't let her work there indefinitely, and she had to actually come back to North Carolina or change her work status to a contract employee, which she certainly wasn't interested in doing. So that example just kind of illustrates that remote does not mean remote anywhere. So always ask good questions about what limitations might be there for you in a hybrid or a remote situation. So here are 3 pages of examples. I'm not going to read them one for one. The video obviously will show these, but also I'll post the presentations as well. But this will give you a good example of some opportunities. So there's 4 on this page, kind of hitting some different majors, 3 on this page here, and 2 on this page. Now remember, you may have noticed that on the first page, and I'll go back actually to look at it again, you can use different types of emoticons or symbols within these. And here you can see, for example, the extensive wine knowledge is sort of there for, here with a wine glass. That's an example, but certainly feel free to use these as much as possible, but just make sure you're not doing them just for style points. Make sure that they're sort of relevant or at least sort of generic so that it doesn't give the wrong impression to the reader. Continuing on, we're going to move on to the next important section, which is the About section. So the intro area, which includes the first numbers items, really 2 and 3, and then the About section are really the most important things that you want to spend the majority of your time on. Experience and the other sections are going to be important too, but you should be spending 80% plus of your time with, with really these first few points. The About section on your LinkedIn profile is like your personal pitch or story. It's where you get to tell people more about who you are, what you do, and what makes you tick. And here is why it's important, especially for a college student. So first of all, it's going to tell your story. Unlike a resume, the About section lets you share your story in your own words. You can talk about your studies, what you're passionate about, what goals you have, and what your personal journey was, perhaps that brought you here. If you have sort of an anecdotal story about how someone was a mentor for you or inspired you to move into your particular major of choice, then tell that story here. Talk about how maybe your mother inspired you to have an interest in accounting. That could be something that would be very interesting to people. It also can show your personality. It makes your profile a bit more human and relatable, which can catch the interest of people. Of course, we want to highlight your skills and achievements, and so we can use that here and also in the experience section. We don't want to repeat ourselves too much, so we might want to showcase the most important things in our About section and then move the rest of them to either the experience, education, volunteer, or organization sections, wherever that happens to be relevant for that. We can also talk about where your goals are. So again, talking about the journey, if you've got a specific career goal that you're looking for, this might help readers understand where you're headed and maybe even how they might help get you there. And then finally, a well-written About section is going to be a great example of how you can communicate. And, your written communication skills are really important. And this is a good way of showing how you can communicate, but also it can spark conversations and open doors to opportunities. So with the About section, as you'll notice here, you have 2,600 characters, which is quite a lot. It's not as much as you think, but it's actually quite a lot of detail. Similarly to the headline, though, it's more about quality over quantity. You can use the first person point of view, but be concise, please. Highlight any relevant credentials and achievements you have. And then, obviously we want to keep a really positive tone. People want positive people, so, make sure that it overall has a very positive and constructive tone. This is definitely not, though, these things. So, we want to make sure that you're strategic about what's included here and use the most or make the most of the real estate that you have here. And this is really a lost opportunity for many people, particularly those in creative concentrations like entrepreneurship, marketing, and professional selling. If you are in marketing and professional selling or in entrepreneurship, we're talking about marketing the best product you'll ever have, which is you. Take the opportunity to do that with LinkedIn. But as I said, it's not, this is not just your personal branding statement, although if that's kind of where you decide you want to go, that's perfectly fine. But really, as I said, it's a lost opportunity if you choose to do it that way. This is not your resume, so don't just copy and paste your resume information into your LinkedIn. Again, that's an option for you, but again, also a lost opportunity. Also about the About section, make sure it's readable. Make sure that you're making good use of white space and bullets and being concise. Don't make it just a dense paragraph. Think about posts that you see in social media in your About section should have elements of that, even though it is going to be a narrative story that you probably could tell. Still make use of space to make sure it's easier to read. Short paragraphs, spacing, bullets, those kinds of things will help. Other things that you want to consider is a call to action, inviting people to connect with you. You can add your personal contact information or other relevant and personal information to kind of tell your story, but be careful here. Be mindful of sharing too much personal information, not so much for the scam purposes, but again, just so that you're just being a little bit mindful about what you put out there that people can read easily on social media. So how can you create your About section? This is kind of a list of things that you can use to tell your story. Basically guidelines on how to make it your story, but these are just ideas. Your story is going to be unique to you. And this is another way of kind of describing it. If you need a bit of help in that, this might actually help you is kind of the ACE format. This might be a way of helping you craft the story. But you know what? Don't forget AI. If you're struggling with this and these two options haven't helped you, go to your AI selection of choice and ask it to help you craft your message. You'll need to populate it with information so it kind of knows how to put that together. You might talk about what you're interested in, what your goals are, just make a list of things and then ask it to create a compelling story for your About section. And quite honestly, I've done that with some of my clients when I started to need to kind of break through a mental block. And it does a great job if you give it the right kind of prompts. So let's move on to the experience section. For the assignment, you're to include your 2 most recent positions, and it's fine if they're part-time roles. By the way, if you only have one recent position, one part-time job, you don't have 2, that's okay. Just let me know so that when I'm grading it, I am taking note of that. I'm not going to penalize you if you've only had one part-time job or no part-time jobs in some cases. But, 2 is what we like to show because a lot of students will come in with 3 or 4 part-time jobs. 2 really is what we really need. I mean, you don't need to put a laundry list of things. It's not about, again, the quantity of it. It's just we're going to talk about the quality of the roles and keep it updated. One of the things that's important about having 2 roles and why we ask you to do that is that it's shown that profiles that have at least 2 positions in the experience section tend to get quite a lot more views, 12 times in fact, in the research that I've seen. So again, don't restate your resume, add skills to each roles. This are going to be a subset of the skills we'll have in point number 7. And you can also add skills to the About section too. I failed to mention that. You're going to want to add keywords strategically in the description, in the text, to help you achieve a higher score in searches. With a higher score, what that means is it's going to move you up in the list, if you will. So you'll show up in the first few pages as opposed to page 10 or 15 of a search. Similarly, keywords is going to do all of that for you. And then you want to focus on similar strategies from the resume discussion that we will have, and that is focus on accomplishments. So with that, we're going to want to talk about scope information and things that are important that you've learned in your part-time roles or your internship experience. So, frequency, scope, accomplishments, as I said, the size of the organization, what they do, the products, its customers. Make sure you kind of explain that in the experience section to kind of give an idea of where you've worked and the things that you've been exposed to. This is ultimately going to connect the dots to help explain your role, show transferable skills that you've experienced even in your part-time roles, and how they can apply to the positions that you're looking to apply to. One thing here students sometimes will do is they'll add organizations or volunteer work, like they're a member of a fraternity. Even if you're a president of your fraternity or organization, this is meant to be in a separate section. So the organization section or the volunteer sections you can add in LinkedIn as well. These should go there. Don't put them in your experience section. Education is very similar in terms of this. Make sure you attach it to the right school. I also didn't mention that in the experience section, but make sure you attach it to the right organization. Sometimes people will type in the company name and they'll not do a search for the company because it may have a division name or something that may not be affiliated with the organization on LinkedIn. And you want to make sure that it's attached to the organization, because sometimes recruiters will use organizations and schools as part of their search. And if you're not attached to the organization properly, you may not show up in a search. An example with UNCW is I've seen some students that'll connect themselves with the Cameron School of Business and not UNCW, the institution. If I happen to be doing a search for people that come from UNCW, you may not show up in that search because of that. Also include your degree and your concentration, not just that you're business administration. That's too general, unless that is just your general degree. If you have a business administration degree with a focus in economics, make sure you show the economics. Add awards that you've received, dean's list, and things like that. Add relevant coursework if you're at that point in your academic career. Also show your GPA, activities in clubs. You can move this to the volunteer section if you like. And then again, add more keywords as you're describing all of this. A couple of other things. Community college is okay to add your education. High school, we do not recommend that you add it there unless it was a very, very prestigious high school or something that will kind of move the needle. Otherwise, high school is just kind of a waste of space. When we talk about skills, this is really going to be talking mostly about hard skills, but also some soft skills are in here as well. The requirement for the assignment is that you add 10, but you can add, believe it or not, up to 100. And you can sprinkle them in through the different sections as well, although the master list will still be 100 in the skills that you use in education experience, and in the about section is going to be a subset of the master list of this 10 to 100 that you're required to have. Make sure that these come from job descriptions of roles that you're interested in, from the same sources that we've talked about before. The other thing is be careful with the skills list. LinkedIn does not police this. So for instance, if you put, you have experience in making presentations, LinkedIn will have various forms of that. It'll have presentation, singular, presentations, plural, PowerPoint presentations. There are variations of it. So make sure you're adding one that makes good sense and would be recognizable by people. And then work with your friends, professors, coworkers, bosses to endorse these skills, because this will show up, and I'll show it on the next slide, as credibility for your skills in these particular areas. And then the other thing you can do with these different sections too, experience, education, and skills, you can actually reorder them. And I highly recommend that you rank the top 3 skills and you organize them such that these are the most important skills for the job that you're most interested in, because these will show first on your profile. So I mentioned the endorsements. If you get endorsements from your network, this will show what you've learned and add credibility to your profile and these skills. So in this case, you can see that this person has 3 different skills shown on their profile, and that they've been endorsed by 65, 54, and 53 people respectively. So this is one of the reasons why we do this. If you show the skills but you have no endorsement, we really don't have any reason to believe you, to be honest. But the more that you put in here and you have endorsements for, that again adds to the credibility of the list. And one thing we always talk about is the more skills you have that you put in here, this will encourage people to look at your profile, and those that have a robust skills list show up in profile views 33 times more often than those that do not have this built out. So finally, our final reminder here is that the assignment connection requirement. So in the summer session, it's 10. In a normal summer or a normal semester, it's 20. But the whole point is to build your professional network. So if you're just starting out, don't just stop at the 10 or 20, but continue to build it out because that's the whole point of this, is to build your professional network. Start with fellow students, family, friends, professors, coworkers, all kinds of sources for this. And of course, invite me. The other thing I would tell you is that LinkedIn allows you to add your personal contents by linking to your personal email, and this might seem like an easy solution for you. However, what we found is that when LinkedIn does this, it doesn't send you don't have the capability of personalizing the message or customizing the message, which is really, really important. So this can be a way of adding people quickly, but unless they know you, they might not accept your connection. So it might be wiser to send a customized connection request. And speaking of that, when you start browsing companies of interest and starting to reach out to people for informational interviews and to add people to your network, make sure you customize the message most of the time, unless you know them. So finally, there's a question around connect or follow. Both buttons will be there, and if you follow someone, you'll be able to see if when they make posts. So one thing that we recommend, if it's an influencer, just follow them. You'll be able to see everything they post. But if you want to connect with them and message with them, the connect button is the preferred option. And the other thing is sometimes you can check out your connections. A lot of people hide them, but if they're open, you might be able to see it. And then don't forget, we ask you to join at least one group. You can join the Cameron School of Business as a group. You can join several other UNCW organizations to cover that. But I would encourage you to look for an industry group to make it more applicable for your job search. All right. That's it for section 2 of the LinkedIn profile presentations. So thank you very much.